The strangest thing about losing power is realizing something is still feeding in the dark. At 2:13 in the morning, the spindle on my CNC screamed once, sharp and metallic, then died in the middle of a cut. Every light in Cole Precision Works vanished at the same time. The ventilation fans slowed to a groan. The coolant pump coughed. Somewhere inside the machine, an $18,000 tractor component sat, trapped beneath a carbide bit hot enough to glow. Then came the silence. Not peaceful silence. The heavy kind. The kind that makes every loose chain, every cooling pipe, every drop of oil sound guilty. I stood beside the control panel with one hand still on the emergency stop. The smell of burned cutting fluid hung in the air, bitter and chemical, mixing with hot steel and old concrete. Red emergency lights should have flickered on. They didn't. My entire shop was dead. Outside, gravel snapped beneath a set of tires. I turned toward the front windows just in time to catch two white taillights slipping through the gate. A Lexus SUV. Clean, expensive, impossible to mistake beneath the security lamp. Victoria Hargrove's car. She didn't speed away. That would have looked guilty. She rolled out slowly, almost gracefully, like a woman leaving a charity dinner after making sure everyone had seen her donation. My phone vibrated against the steel workbench. For half a second, I thought it was Rachel asking why I was still working. Then I saw an alert from the three-phase energy monitor we had installed inside the shop. Shop panel load, 0 kilowatts. Underneath it, a second reading pulled from the utility meter upstream of my main disconnect kept changing. Utility meter load, 86. For kilowatts. I stared at it. The machines were dead. The office lights were black. The compressor wasn't running. Even the coffee warmer had gone cold. But my meter was still pulling enough electricity to power several houses. I refreshed the application. 86, 7. Then 87, 1. The number climbed while I stood in total darkness. A low hum seeped through the brick wall behind me. Faint. Steady. Almost too quiet to notice beneath the ringing in my ears. The smart meter. Still alive. Still counting. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the rear service door. My boots scraped through metal shavings scattered across the floor. Each step sounded louder than the last. Cold air hit my face when I pushed outside. The silver meter box sat beneath the security camera, its digital display blinking blue against the darkness. The main disconnect feeding my shop had been pulled. The handle hung down, locked in the off position with a fresh plastic seal I had never seen before. Someone had shut down my business. But the meter continued to spin. Beyond the fence, through a line of bare oak trees, the Briarwood Ridge clubhouse glowed like a cruise ship. Pool lights shimmered electric blue. Decorative lamps traced the walking paths. 3 electric vehicles sat charging beneath a polished green sign that read Net Zero Community Initiative. The clubhouse pumps hummed beneath the ground. I could feel the vibration through the soles of my boots. That was when the first real piece clicked into place. Victoria hadn't simply cut my power. She had separated my machines from the current, leaving whatever was hidden behind my meter exposed on its own. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Victoria. Due to an immediate electrical safety concern, Cole Precision Works has been disconnected pending HOA inspection. Further operation may result in legal action. I read it twice. Then I looked at the clubhouse, at the charging stations, and at the blue numbers still rising on my screen. 88, 3 kilowatts. Victoria thought she had left me standing in the dark. What she didn't know was that darkness had just made her secret easier to see. What would you do if someone shut down your livelihood, but your meter kept charging you for electricity going somewhere else? 4 months before Victoria Hargrove cut the power, she stood in my office wearing cream-colored heels that had never touched honest dirt and offered to buy the ground beneath my feet. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 43 years old, divorced, raising a 17-year-old daughter, and running the last independent machine shop within 30 miles of Briarwood Ridge. Cole Precision Works wasn't pretty. The red brick had darkened from 50 years of rain and welding smoke. The roof rattled when the north wind came down hard. Motor oil had soaked so deep into the concrete that no amount of bleach could erase the smell. But the building was ours. My grandfather poured the foundation in 1974. My father, Walter Cole, added the second bay after coming home from the Navy with 2 toolboxes and more confidence than money. I grew up sweeping steel shavings from beneath lathes before I was tall enough to see over their control panels. Dad taught me that machines rarely failed without warning. A vibration changed. A bearing heated. A motor pulled more current than it should. Everything talks, he used to say. You just have to stop making noise long enough to listen. After he died, I kept his old stool beside the main workbench. The leather seat was cracked down the middle, and one leg sat slightly shorter than the others. I could have replaced it for $20. I never did. Farmers brought us hydraulic pumps during harvest. Truckers came in with broken axles at midnight. The volunteer fire department trusted us to repair equipment nobody else would touch. Some customers paid late. Some paid in cash. One old rancher still paid me with freezer beef and handwritten thank you notes. We kept people working. That was why Victoria wanted us gone. Briarwood Ridge had expanded until its perfect beige houses surrounded 3 sides of my property. The 4th side faced the county road. My shop sat directly where Victoria wanted to build a grand eastern entrance for a new development called Briarwood Reserve. Stone pillars, decorative waterfalls, private security booths, and my land in the middle of it. She placed a purchase agreement on my desk and slid it toward me with 2 manicured fingers. The number looked impressive until I read the fine print. It was barely 60% of the property's market value. You'd be able to retire, she said. I'm 43. Then consider it an early opportunity. Her perfume filled my office, floral and sharp enough to cover the smell of hot metal drifting in from the shop. I pushed the agreement back. This place isn't for sale. Her smile remained, but the skin around it tightened. Everything is for sale, Mr. Cole. Not this. She left without shaking my hand. The first violation notice arrived 6 days later. Excessive industrial noise. Then came improper exterior lighting, unauthorized commercial traffic, visual pollution, hazardous storage, and something called community aesthetic incompatibility. There was only one problem. My shop predated Briarwood Ridge by decades. The property was zoned for commercial use, and it had never been annexed into the HOA or subjected to its covenants. Rachel helped me organize the letters at our kitchen table, sorting them by date while rain tapped against the windows. They can't find you if you're not a member, she said. They can mail anything they want. She had been the one who convinced me to upgrade the utility meter and pair it with a local 3-phase energy monitor. Current sensors inside the shop measured what my machines actually used, while the utility meter recorded everything passing through the service entrance. Rachel liked watching the graphs on her phone. I liked knowing when an old motor started drawing more current than it should. At the time, it felt like a harmless upgrade. Outside my office window, its silver box blinked steadily against the brick wall. Across the trees, Briarwood poured fresh concrete beside the clubhouse. New trenches appeared near the pool, then vanished beneath perfect strips of sod. At night, I could hear the low mechanical hum of pumps long after the neighborhood had gone quiet. One evening, while searching through Dad's old filing cabinet, I found a utility bill from 6 years earlier. A red circle surrounded the total. Beside it, in his blocky handwriting, were 4 words. This load makes no sense. I stared at the note longer than I should have. Then the phone rang, another machine failed, and I put the bill back in the drawer. That was my mistake. Because while I was busy keeping the town running, Victoria Hargrove was already using my father's shop for something he had noticed years before and never lived long enough to prove. Victoria Hargrove built her reputation on saving electricity she was never paying for. 3 weeks after she left my office, the Briarwood Ridge newsletter landed in every mailbox within 5 miles. Her face filled the front page. She stood beside 3 new electric vehicle chargers wearing a pale green blazer, one hand resting on a polished sign that read Cleaner Future, Stronger Community. The article called her a visionary. According to Victoria, Briarwood Ridge had reduced its grid consumption by 78% in 6 years. She credited responsible leadership, advanced infrastructure, and community sacrifice. That last phrase caught my attention. Community sacrifice. Briarwood homeowners had been paying a monthly energy improvement fee for years. $65 per house, added quietly beneath landscaping and pool maintenance. Victoria claimed the money-funded solar lighting, efficient pumps, vehicle chargers, and a heated clubhouse pool. The residents paid more. The HOA reported using less. And my shop's electric bill kept climbing. I spread 12 months of utility statements across my workbench. The paper edges curled in the heat coming off the welding bay. Numbers marched down each page in black ink, clean and certain. Production had dropped 14% after I lost 2 agricultural contracts. Electricity use had increased 21%. That did not happen by accident. I checked the large loads first. The CNC spindle motor was healthy. The air compressor cycled normally. The welders drew exactly what their plates said they should. I inspected contactors, insulation, grounding, and every feeder panel in the building. Nothing explained the difference. Even after I locked the doors, the utility meter never returned to a normal standby load. 86 kilowatts was only the overnight baseline. During the day, the illegal draw disappeared beneath the heavier load of my own machines. On weekends and during Briarwood events, the total climbed far higher. Not enough to look impossible on a commercial account. Enough to bleed me for years. Victoria knew how to make damage look ordinary. Her harassment grew more polished after I rejected her offer. She stopped sending letters on HOA stationery and began using county-style forms with official-looking seals. A private security company started photographing license plates outside my gate. Customers received warnings about entering a restricted neighborhood transition zone. There was no such zone, but fear does not need legal authority. It only needs a uniform and a clipboard. One Tuesday morning, a farmer named Ben Holloway arrived with a damaged irrigation pump in the back of his truck. He had been doing business with my family for 30 years. He shut off the engine but did not get out. Some woman at the entrance said this place is under investigation. He told me through the open window. For what? Environmental violations, fire risk, electrical theft. That last one hit differently. I looked toward the tree line. Victoria's white Lexus sat beside the clubhouse entrance, sunlight flashing across its windshield. She say who was stealing electricity? Ben shook his head. Just said your operation was unsafe. I repaired his pump anyway. By noon, 2 other customers had canceled. That evening, Rachel found me sitting in the office with Dad's old utility bill in one hand and Victoria's newsletter in the other. The fluorescent tube above my desk buzzed like an angry insect. She read the headline. 78%? She asked. That's what they claim. And your usage went up? Every year. Rachel opened the smart meter app and dragged her finger across the overnight graph. A blue line rose at 10:05 p.m. Stayed nearly flat for 7 hours, then dropped just after dawn. That looks scheduled, she said. It did. Machines do not choose the same minute every night. Timers do. We drove past the clubhouse at 10:30. The neighborhood streets were empty, lawns silver beneath the security lights. Behind the locked pool fence, steam rolled off the water into the cold air. The pump house vibrated with a deep mechanical hum. Fresh concrete ran from the building toward the edge of my property. I parked, stepped out, and pressed my boot against the ground. The vibration traveled through the soul, straight toward my shop. Across the road, a banner hung beneath Victoria's office window. Briarwood Net Zero Celebration, coming soon. She wanted everyone looking at the sign. My father had taught me to look at the load. And for the first time, I understood that Victoria's miracle was not efficiency. It was theft with good branding. By the time the story caught back up to 2:13 that Thursday morning, I knew Victoria wanted my land. What I did not know was how far she had already reached into my electrical system to get it. The night she finally pulled the switch, she made one mistake. She assumed I would only notice the darkness. It happened on a Thursday, 11 days after Rachel and I watched steam rise from the Briarwood pool. I had stayed late to finish a precision coupling for Holloway Farms, the kind of part nobody stocked anymore because the machine it belonged to was older than most of the houses in Briarwood Ridge. The CNC was halfway through its final pass. Coolant sprayed across the steel in a pale blue sheet. The spindle held at 6,000 revolutions per minute. The shop smelled like hot metal, cutting oil, and the coffee I had forgotten on my desk 3 hours earlier. Then someone tested the rear door. Just once. A soft metallic click beneath the machine noise. I looked toward the security monitor. 2 figures stood outside the service panel beneath the west camera. One wore a reflective jacket with the logo of Hargrove Energy Solutions across the back. The other wore a cream-colored coat. Victoria. She held a flashlight while the man beside her worked a key into my electrical enclosure. I hit record on my phone and started toward the rear exit. Before I reached it, the main breaker snapped. The sound cracked through the building like a rifle shot. The lights disappeared. The CNC spindle screamed as it lost speed under load. The cutter dragged across the coupling, carving a deep silver wound through 12 hours of work. The ventilation system stopped. The coolant pump died with a wet cough. For 1 second, everything moved on momentum. Then the shop went still. I heard the man outside say, "That should isolate the commercial panel." Victoria answered, calm as church music. "Good. Lock it out before he comes outside." I shoved open the rear door. Cold wind carried the smell of wet soil and diesel exhaust across the yard. Victoria was already walking toward her Lexus. Calvin Hargrove stood beside the meter enclosure, pressing a red plastic seal through the disconnect handle. "What do you think you're doing?" I shouted. Calvin did not turn around. Victoria did. Her expression held no surprise. "That told me this had never been an inspection. Your facility has been disconnected due to an immediate fire hazard," she said. "By whose authority?" "The association received an emergency report." "I'm not in your association. This affects community safety." Calvin closed the metal cover and snapped a red contractor lockout tag through the disconnect handle. There was no utility logo on it, no county inspection number, and no name of an authorized electrician. His gloves left dark smears across the silver paint. I stepped toward him. He raised one hand. "Touch the panel, and you'll be interfering with a safety action." The words sounded rehearsed. I looked for a utility truck. There wasn't one. No county inspector. No fire marshal. No representative from the power company. Just Calvin's black work van and Victoria's white Lexus idling beside my gravel gate. "You cut power to an operating machine," I said. "You could have caused a fire." Victoria tilted her head. "Then perhaps you should reconsider operating industrial equipment this close to residential homes." There it was. Not safety. Leverage. She opened the Lexus door, and the interior light spilled across a leather folder on the passenger seat. I saw the corner of a document inside. Purchase agreement. She had brought it with her. By sunrise, the damaged coupling was scrap. The stalled cutter had bent the spindle assembly. 2 control boards failed when the voltage collapsed, and a hydraulic pump overheated without ventilation. The repair estimate came to $32,000. The HOA contract was due the next morning. I called Ben before dawn and told him I could not finish the part. He was quiet for several seconds. "I've got crops drying in the field, Ethan." "I know. I can't wait another week." "I know." He found another shop 3 counties away. By noon, word had spread that Cole Precision Works had been shut down for electrical violations. My phone stopped ringing. 2 customers canceled open jobs. My employees, Mason and Luis, stood near the cold welding bay pretending not to look worried. I told them I would cover the week. I had no idea how. At 10 that morning, Victoria arrived with the leather folder. Her heels clicked against the concrete floor as if she already owned it. "I'm sorry things reached this point," she said, placing the agreement on my desk. "But Briarwood Reserve is prepared to help you avoid further losses." The offer was lower than the first one, valid for 48 hours. I stared at her signature, then at the dark shop behind her. Victoria smiled. "Sometimes the responsible choice is knowing when to let go." She turned and walked out. Rachel came in through the side door a minute later, carrying 2 coffees. She looked at the dead machines, then at the monitoring dashboard open on my phone. "Dad," she said quietly. I followed her eyes. The sensors inside the shop showed 0. The utility meter upstream of the disconnect showed 86.4 kilowatts. Outside, the silver box still hummed. Across the trees, the Briarwood pool pumps were running. Victoria had cut my machines away from the circuit, and for the first time in 6 years, nothing inside my shop was left to hide what her community was stealing. An empty building does not pull 86 kilowatts unless somebody has wired that power somewhere else. I locked the front gate, sent Mason and Luis home, and stood alone inside the dead shop with Rachel beside me. No lights, no compressor, no welding units, no CNC controls glowing in the dark. I opened the main distribution cabinet and switched off every branch circuit one by one. Machine bay, office, break room, exterior lights, heating, security system backup. The smart meter reading did not move. 86.4 kilowatts. Rachel refreshed the screen. 86.6. The number was climbing. I pulled a flashlight from the workbench and followed the main conduit along the west wall. The metal pipe entered the building from the meter, crossed above the tool cages, then dropped into the distribution panel. Everything inside looked normal. That meant the diversion had to branch off after the utility meter, but before my shop's main disconnect. Whoever installed it had made sure every stolen amp passed through my account before the current split away from my building. I could hear my father's voice as clearly as if he were standing behind me. Start at the source. Follow the load. Rachel opened the historical graph on her phone. Blue lines filled the screen, 6 months of electrical use broken into 15-minute blocks. I zoomed in on the previous week. Every night at exactly 10:05, the load climbed. At 10:20, it leveled off. At 2 o'clock in the morning, another spike appeared. Then, between 5:25 and 5:40, the entire pattern collapsed. Same shape, same times, night after night. That isn't random, Rachel said. No, could it be refrigeration? We don't have refrigeration. Security lights? Not enough to power half a grocery store. We checked weekends. The pattern changed. Saturday nights showed almost twice the load, especially when Briarwood hosted weddings, board dinners, or pool events. On the night of their winter gala, my meter had peaked at 143 kilowatts. My shop had been closed. I stared at the graph until the blue lines stopped looking like numbers and started looking like a confession. At 9:55 that night, Rachel and I drove to the edge of the property with the headlights off. Cold mist floated above the Briarwood pool. The clubhouse windows glowed gold. Music thumped faintly through the trees while electric cars sat beneath the charging canopy. At 10:05, my phone vibrated. Load increase detected. The number jumped from 82 to 97 kilowatts. A pump started beneath the clubhouse. I felt the vibration through the steering wheel. We walked along my fence with flashlights pointed at the ground. Fresh sod covered a narrow strip running from the pool equipment building toward the old utility easement beside my shop. The grass looked perfect. Too perfect. Near the property line, a concrete access cover sat beneath a thin layer of mulch. No markings. No utility stamp. For new bolts around the edge. I crouched and placed my palm against it. The cover was warm. Beneath it, something hummed with the steady rhythm of a heavy electrical load. Rachel whispered, "That line goes toward our meter." I did not open the cover. That mattered. Touching unknown high-voltage equipment could kill us, destroy evidence, or give Victoria a chance to claim I had altered the system myself. Instead, I photographed everything. The access cover, the fresh sod, the route toward the clubhouse, the time on my phone, the live meter reading. Then I called the emergency number printed on my utility bill. The dispatcher listened without interrupting. When I told her my disconnected shop was still drawing nearly 100 kilowatts, her tone changed. "Do not touch the meter, the conduit, or any underground enclosure," she said. "We're flagging this as suspected diversion." Diversion, a clean word for theft. Back at the shop, I pulled Dad's old bills from the filing cabinet. The red circles went back 6 years. Summer spikes, winter spikes, weekend spikes, all beginning shortly after Briarwood poured that first concrete trench beside the clubhouse. Victoria had not cut my power to punish me. She had cut the shop away from the circuit because she thought it would force me to sell. Instead, she removed the noise. No motors, no welders, no compressors, just her hidden load, exposed in perfect blue lines. She had spent 6 years hiding a signal inside my business. Then she turned my business off and left the signal running by itself. Daniel Mercer arrived at 7:12 the next morning in a gray utility truck with no company logo on the doors. That told me this was no routine service call. He was 50, broad-shouldered, and quiet in the way experienced linemen usually are. He wore insulated gloves clipped to his belt and carried a hard black case that looked more like evidence equipment than electrical tools. The air smelled of wet gravel and cold copper. Victoria's red lockout tag still hung from my disconnect. Daniel studied it without touching it. "That tag isn't ours," he said. He photographed the number printed at the bottom and called the county inspection office. 20 minutes later, they confirmed no electrical inspection had been performed at my shop. The license number on Victoria's fire hazard report belonged to an inspector who had retired 3 years earlier. He photographed the seal, the meter number, the enclosure, and Calvin's fingerprints smeared across the metal cover. Then he connected a reader to the smart meter port and watched lines of data scroll across his tablet. His expression changed. Not dramatically, just one slow tightening around the eyes. "How long has this property been showing overnight load?" I found records going back 6 years. He looked toward the clubhouse through the trees. Then we need more than a meter check. He called 2 investigators. Over the next 48 hours, Daniel brought in a utility theft investigator, a county electrical inspector, and a sheriff's deputy assigned to protect the site. Using the utility easement and an emergency safety authorization, the crew marked the west side of my property with orange flags. One technician swept the ground while another followed the service route with a signal transmitter. The beeping moved along my wall, crossed the gravel, passed beneath the fence, then continued straight toward Briarwood Ridge. The signal ended beside the warm concrete access cover Rachel and I had found. There's an unregistered feeder under this, Daniel said. Connected after my meter? After the meter and before your disconnect. Every amp running through it was billed to you. Under the county inspector's supervision, the utility crew opened the cover. A bundle of thick copper cable disappeared into a black conduit running beneath the fresh sod. The insulation was newer than the original shop service, but the connectors were stained with age. Daniel checked the installation label. Then he gave a humorless laugh. Hargrove Energy Solutions. Calvin's company. The conduit fed the clubhouse mechanical room, the pool heaters, the exterior lighting system, and the vehicle chargers. Every amp passed through my meter before branching away from my building. I had been paying for Briarwood's clean energy miracle. Daniel pulled 6 years of archived readings from the utility server. The data had been stored remotely, untouched by anyone in the HOA. On his tablet, the pattern looked like a blue mountain range. Pool season, holiday parties, summer cooling, winter heating. Every major Briarwood event appeared as a spike on my account. Then another vehicle entered my driveway. A faded blue sedan stopped beside the shop, and Laura Bennett stepped out holding a cardboard file box against her chest. I recognized her from the HOA newsletters. She had served as Briarwood's treasurer until Victoria replaced her 2 years earlier for what the newsletter called administrative differences. Laura looked exhausted. I heard the utility company was here, she said. I think you need to see this. Inside the office, she placed the box on Dad's old desk. Bank statements, board minutes, energy assessments, invoices from Hargrove Energy Solutions. Briarwood homeowners had been charged $65 every month for energy modernization. 412 homes. 6 years. Nearly $2 million collected. Part of it paid for legitimate equipment. A large portion did not. Calvin's company billed the HOA for electricity it had never purchased. Victoria approved every invoice. The payments moved through 3 consulting accounts before landing in a private development fund tied to Briarwood Reserve. Laura pointed to a column of repeated charges. Residents thought this covered the pool, chargers, and clubhouse, she said. But our actual utility bills were impossibly low. Did you question them? That's why I was removed. She pulled out a printed email. The date was 5 years old. The sender was Victoria Hargrove. The message was addressed to Calvin. Keep Cole's commercial load active. No one questions a machine shop bill. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The fluorescent light above us flickered weakly on emergency power. Daniel read the email twice, then placed it in a clear evidence sleeve. By the end of the second day, the utility's preliminary estimate was complete. 6 years of stolen electricity. Commercial demand charges created by Briarwood's pumps, heaters, chargers, and event loads. Unauthorized service costs billed directly to my account. The total came to $603,417. That figure covered the stolen power alone. Laura's financial records pointed to another $1. $3 million in fraudulent HOA assessments, false contractor invoices, and transfers tied to Briarwood Reserve. Victoria had spent years calling my shop dirty, outdated, and dangerous. All that time, she had been hiding her entire operation inside my power bill. Dad had seen the numbers. Rachel had seen the pattern. The smart meter had recorded every stolen watt. And now the 6-year load curve was no longer just a graph. It was a timeline of the crime. The hardest part of catching Victoria was pretending I had not already won. Daniel told me that in the back office, while 2 utility investigators copied 6 years of meter data onto sealed drives. Don't confront her, he said. Don't threaten her. Don't post anything online. I looked through the office window at my dark machines. She shut down my business. And now she thinks you're desperate. Let her keep thinking that. The plan was simple because the best traps usually are. The utility company installed a temporary monitoring unit inside the service enclosure. It measured voltage, current, direction of flow, and every attempt to open the cabinet. A second recorder went beneath the concrete access cover near the clubhouse. Both devices transmitted directly to Daniel's department. Not to my phone, not to my computer, not to anything Victoria could accuse me of altering. The county investigator mounted two small cameras facing the underground feeder. One watched the access cover. The other covered the route from Calvin's service road. Then we waited. I helped make the lie believable. I left Victoria's purchase agreement open on my office desk, where anyone looking through the front window could see it. Mason loaded tool cabinets into his truck. Luis carried boxes out through the side door. They were empty. By noon, half of Briarwood had heard that Cole Precision Works was closing. Victoria arrived at 3:40 wearing a navy coat and the expression of someone attending a funeral she had arranged. "I'm glad you're being practical," she said. I kept my hands flat on the desk. "I'm considering the offer." Her eyes moved toward the agreement. Considering is not signing. I need until tomorrow. The current terms expire at noon. She wanted me cornered. I lowered my eyes and let the silence do the work. Victoria smiled. Tomorrow morning, then. At 4:15 that afternoon, the utility company served Briarwood Ridge with an emergency notice. The unregistered feeder would be isolated at 8 the next morning, and all connected equipment would be preserved for investigation. Victoria had already seen the orange flags, the utility trucks, and the county inspector walking the route beneath the trees. That evening, Briarwood still hung banners around the clubhouse for its net zero celebration. Green lights wrapped the entrance columns. Catering trucks rolled in. A local reporter set up near the pool. Victoria planned to stand beneath those lights and take credit for 6 years of stolen electricity. Now she also knew she had one night left to make the wire disappear. At 11:36 p.m., the first alert arrived. Tamper event. Access cover opened. I sat inside Daniel's utility truck parked behind an abandoned feed store half a mile away. Rain ticked against the windshield. The cab smelled of coffee, rubber gloves, and damp canvas. On the monitor, Calvin's black van entered the clubhouse service lane with its lights off. Victoria's Lexus followed. Calvin climbed out carrying bolt cutters, an insulated hot stick, a voltage tester, and a red tool bag. Victoria wore dark clothes beneath a plastic raincoat. She kept glancing toward my shop. "They know someone found the line," Daniel murmured. The camera microphone caught Calvin's voice. "If we disconnect it tonight and pull the lugs, they can't prove where it fed." Victoria crouched beside the access cover. "Remove it before the utility gets here." Every word recorded cleanly. Calvin cut the evidence seal. The monitoring unit sent another alert. Seal failure. He removed the cover and used the insulated hot stick to open the feeder disconnect. Then he checked the conductors with his voltage tester. When he forced the interlock, a sharp blue snap jumped across the contactor. Calvin jerked his hand back and cursed. Victoria hissed, "Keep going." That was the moment she stopped being an HOA president trying to hide a billing mistake. She became a woman ordering the destruction of evidence connected to a $603,417 utility theft. Calvin reached into his tool bag for the insulated socket he needed to remove the cable lugs. Daniel pressed the radio button. Now, headlights exploded across the service lane. 2 utility response trucks blocked the van. County vehicles entered from the opposite side. Red and blue lights washed over the clubhouse walls, turning Victoria's green celebration banners purple in the rain. Calvin dropped the saw. Victoria did not run. People like her rarely believe consequences apply until someone places them in handcuffs. She pointed toward my shop and started shouting. Ethan Cole tampered with that system. He set us up. Daniel stepped from the truck holding the sealed monitoring report. "No, ma'am," he said. "The utility company watched you do it." Her face changed then. Not fear. Recognition. Calvin was taken into custody on evidence tampering and utility theft charges. Victoria was detained, questioned, and released before dawn while prosecutors assembled the larger fraud case. She left with a written order forbidding her from touching the electrical system or removing any HOA records. She finally understood that the wire beneath her feet had been talking all night. And this time, everyone with real authority had been listening. Victoria Hargrove returned to the clubhouse the next evening. She had been released pending formal charges, not cleared. Calvin remained in custody. The service lane was sealed, and half the neighborhood had watched blue lights wash across the clubhouse walls in the rain. By noon, enough homeowners had signed a petition to force an emergency membership meeting. Victoria refused to cancel the net zero celebration already scheduled for that evening, so the board meeting and the celebration were held in the same ballroom. By 6 o'clock, the green banners were back up. Caterers carried silver trays through the entrance. A string quartet played beneath lights powered by the same system Victoria had spent 6 years stealing from me. Residents filled the room holding wine glasses, voting packets, and folded programs with her face printed on the cover. She had turned an emergency meeting about her own misconduct into one final campaign event. Rachel and I entered through the front doors at 6:42. Conversation thinned around us. I could smell expensive perfume, roasted meat, and the faint chemical bite of chlorine drifting in from the heated pool. Above the stage, a 20-foot screen displayed Victoria beside the words Briarwood Ridge, leading the clean energy future. She stood at the podium in a white suit. No handcuffs, no apology, just that same polished smile. Recent events, she said, have been deliberately misrepresented by an outside commercial operator seeking financial advantage over our community. Every head turned toward me. Victoria let the silence settle. Mr. Cole has conducted an ongoing campaign of harassment, data manipulation, and infrastructure sabotage because Briarwood refused to purchase his unsafe property at an inflated price. A few residents murmured. She had always understood that confidence could make a lie feel organized. Then Daniel Mercer walked in. Behind him came Laura Bennett, the county electrical inspector, the HOA's emergency attorney, and a utility investigator carrying copies of the records already filed with the court in support of an emergency injunction. Victoria's fingers tightened around the podium. The HOA attorney took the microphone. What you are about to see is limited to utility findings, association records available to the membership, and evidence already entered into the public injunction record. The screen went black. For 1 second, the ballroom reflected itself in the dark glass. Then a blue graph appeared. 6 years of electrical load. Daniel stepped forward. This record comes directly from the utility company's secured server. It was not provided by Mr. Cole, and he had no ability to alter it. The first slide showed my shop's overnight baseline. The second marked every Briarwood pool event, holiday gathering, vehicle charging cycle, and daytime demand peak. The lines matched. Not approximately. Exactly. Every time the clubhouse pumps activated, my meter climbed. Every time the pool heaters shut down, it dropped. Daniel displayed the underground route next. A red line ran from my service, beneath the fence, through the unregistered access vault, and into Briarwood's mechanical room. The room went silent enough to hear the projector fan. Victoria lifted her chin. That proves nothing. Shared infrastructure agreements are common. Laura stepped forward. No agreement existed. She placed the board minutes and bank statements beneath the document camera. They were HOA records she had preserved while serving as treasurer, and every homeowner in the room had the right to inspect them. Energy modernization fees, payments to Hargrove Energy Solutions, transfers into the Briarwood Reserve Development Fund. Then came the email. Keep Cole's commercial load active. No one questions a machine shop bill. Victoria's name appeared in the cinder field. Calvin sat beneath it. A woman near the front whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel displayed the utilities' preliminary calculation. $603,417. Stolen electricity, commercial demand charges, and unauthorized service costs. The HOA attorney changed the slide. A short video clip appeared. It was not the entire criminal recording, only the section already attached to the emergency injunction filing. Calvin broke the evidence seal beneath the rain. Victoria crouched beside him. Her recorded voice came through the ballroom speakers, clean and sharp. "Remove it before the utility gets here." Nobody moved. Nobody looked at me anymore. They looked at her. Victoria backed away from the podium. "You cannot do this in my clubhouse." The county examiner answered from the aisle. "Ma'am, this clubhouse is part of the investigation." At the county inspector's order, utility crews outside isolated the illegal feeder. The chandeliers died. The string quartet's amplifiers went silent. The heated pool pumps wound down beneath the floor with a long mechanical groan. The ballroom ventilation stopped, and the vehicle chargers outside went dark. Only the battery-backed exit signs and red emergency lights remained. People gasped beneath their dim glow. Then, through the tall windows behind the stage, another building came alive. Across the trees, Cole Precision Works lit up one row at a time. Office, machine bay, welding station, exterior lamps. My shop glowed against the night, while Victoria's celebration sat black and silent. Rachel reached for my hand. Victoria had spent 6 years making Briarwood look bright by stealing power from us. Now the current had been returned to its proper source, and everyone was finally looking in the right direction. 3 months later, the first sound I heard inside Cole Precision Works was the clean, rising whine of a spindle coming back to life. Not a siren, not a lawyer's phone call, not Victoria's voice, just steel meeting steel at the speed it was supposed to. Morning light came through the high windows in pale gold bands. Dust floated above the machine bay. Fresh cutting oil ran through the coolant lines, carrying that familiar sharp smell of metal, heat, and work. The shop was alive again. Calvin Hargrove had been charged with utility theft, evidence tampering, fraud, and unlawful interference with commercial electrical service. Victoria faced conspiracy, financial fraud, falsification of HOA records, and attempted destruction of evidence. Their development accounts were frozen. Briarwood Reserve never broke ground. The purchase agreement Victoria had left on my desk ended up sealed inside a county evidence file. By then, it was worth less than the paper it had been printed on. The court-appointed auditor confirmed that the original $603,417 represented the stolen electricity, demand charges, and unauthorized utility costs alone. Then the audit uncovered another $3 million in hidden consulting fees, inflated maintenance contracts, shell company payments, and energy assessments collected from residents who had no idea their money was financing Victoria's private expansion plan. The total criminal exposure kept growing, but $603,417 was the number everyone remembered. It came straight from the meter data. Clean, heavy, impossible to explain away. Briarwood's residents voted out the entire board at an emergency meeting held in a high school gym because the clubhouse remained under investigation. Laura Bennett became interim treasurer. Every contract over $5,000 now had to be posted online. Utility bills were displayed monthly beside meter records anyone could verify. No polished newsletter. No carefully staged photograph. Just numbers. The residents received repayment credits in phases. Some used the money for repairs. Some put it toward mortgages. One retired couple brought me an envelope containing 2 years of refunded energy fees and tried to give me half. I refused. They left a pecan pie instead. For weeks, people came through my gate carrying coffee, sandwiches, handwritten apologies, and parts they had been afraid to bring me while Victoria was spreading rumors. Mason and Luis returned before I could officially call them back. Mason walked in carrying his welding helmet. Luis rolled his toolbox through the door. Neither one asked whether the business could afford them yet. "We've got work to catch up on," Mason said. So we caught up. Ben Holloway brought back the irrigation contract Victoria's shutdown had cost me. The repaired pump ran before the next planting cycle. He paid the full invoice and added a new one for 3 gear assemblies. Word traveled. The shop became busier than it had been in years. Briarwood's new board asked whether I would help convert an unused section of the clubhouse into a weekend trade classroom. Basic electrical safety, welding, motor repair, practical skills for teenagers who had never held anything heavier than a phone. Rachel designed the registration page. I taught the first class beneath the same green banner Victoria had used for her net zero celebration. Someone had crossed out the word net zero and written "start here" in black marker. I left it that way. Outside the shop, Rachel repainted the silver meter box. She sanded away the scratches, replaced the damaged latch, and sealed the edges against rain. But she stopped before covering one deep cut beside the lock. "You missed a spot," I told her. "No," she said. "I didn't." The mark came from the night Calvin broke the seal. A small scar in the metal. Proof that someone had tried to silence a machine and accidentally taught it to testify. That afternoon, I found Dad's old utility bill in the filing cabinet. The red circles still surrounded the impossible total. "This load makes no sense." I framed it and hung it above his crooked stool. He had noticed the truth years before any of us understood it. Everything talks. You just have to stop making noise long enough to listen. I switched on the CNC. The spindle rose smoothly. The lights held steady. The compressor kicked in, then rested. Outside, the smart meter displayed exactly what the shop was using. Not one stolen watt more. Victoria cut my power because she thought darkness belonged to her. She was wrong. Darkness does not erase a current. It reveals where the current has been going. Justice was not loud that morning. It hummed through the walls, steady and patient, all the way back to the source.